Tonight, does the way we consume Star Trek evolve as we get older, or do we become tethered to a particular series? We'll be joined by sociologists John and Mary Jo Tenuto to explore this topic, and we'll also get the perspective of a relatively new fan, right now on Thursday Night Geeks, presented by Fansets.
Well, Dan, they say if it's Tuesday, it must be Belgium. But if it's Thursday, of course, it's Thursday Night Geeks from Trek Geeks. Bill Smith alongside Dan Davidson. We're back after a couple of weeks. And Dan, it's good to see you, buddy.
It's good to see you too, man. I'm excited. A week off. I mean, we don't do the audio podcast for like months or years at a time, but missing a week of Thursday Night Geeks is just weird. So it's great to be here. Good to see you. Hope you had a great trip. And I'm looking forward to a fun time tonight. I got my new Star Trek garb on, and I'm pretty excited.
Wow! So you actually upgraded and bought some clothes?
I did. I didn't say anything about my pants, just my shirt.
Well, I hope you're wearing pants, and so does the rest of our audience. But please,
not gonna tell you,
don't stand up. Dan, I imagine you're drinking a sad beverage like water, or maybe motor oil or something. I, however, am drinking a very lovely bourbon. It's Wilderness Trail. My wife works for an online alcohol distributor, and they've enrolled all of their employees in this Bourbon of the Month club.
Bourbon.
And let me tell you, I'm going to have a brand new bottle of something different shipped to my house every month.
That's awesome. I will be happy to let you and all of our viewers / listeners know that our 60-day diet, eating, drinking healthy is over. And I am drinking a real alcoholic beverage tonight. It's a Cosmo. It's a little outdated because I call it the Christmas Cosmo, because instead of just regular Citron vodka, it's got a Smirnoff vodka called Red, White, and Merry. It's kind of like a citrusy orange ginger. And I made a Cosmo out of that, and it's fantastic. And boy, did I miss this stuff. So I'm just going to...
Plenty of people offering to help me drink bourbon, but I imagine, Dan, that you'll have plenty of people in line at your bar to help you drink those. It does look awfully tasty. Dan, tonight, we're going to broach a topic that we've been trying to talk about for months. And we've been ready to talk about it for months, but, life gets in the way, and new jobs and all of the things. So why don't you tell us what we have on the menu today?
I have really no idea what we're talking about tonight. No,
shut up.
No, this is something that we have talked about for a long time, about doing it over on Trek Geeks, but we decided to do it here because it's really a great conversation to do on Thursday Night Geeks. And basically, as we've talked about what we're thinking of doing, we have been approached by people saying, "Oh, you guys mean that you don't like Star Trek anymore? Or you don't watch Star Trek anymore?" That's not it. We want to talk about whether or not has Star Trek passed us by. That's how we're touting this. But basically, it's more of a conversation as we get older, do the ideas about what we hold on to for Trek as an example is what we're going to talk about tonight. Is it something that we hang on to the past about? Something that we're familiar with as things go on as we get older. I know that you have a great story about why you thought of this idea based on when you were a kid with your sister. And I think it is a perfect example of what we're going to try to talk about here tonight.
Absolutely. I'm going to save that for when we get into the next segment with two of our special guests. But why don't you tell us all of the guests we have tonight, Dan?
Oh, we have so many guests, so many fun guests. We have some incredible people who we have not had. It's kind of a pattern that we haven't had people on the show in like a decade.
I know.
I got to talk to the person who makes those schedules up. We're going to have John and Mary Jo Tenuto join us to talk about the aspect of Star Trek from people our age, and that whole idea. They're sociologists, so it's very important that we're going to get that really interesting, dynamic conversation going about it. And then we're going to have our one and only senior producer of Trek Geeks on to talk about his ideas about this topic. He's a much, much younger laddie over from Great Britain. And we're going to have a discussion with him. We actually had the discussion already, but we're finally going to bring it to everybody to see. I think he's staying up late tonight over in London to watch this. So he's basically going to be watching himself on YouTube tonight. That's kind of cool.
That is kind of cool. I watch myself on YouTube all the time. Although I try to cover the screen when you're on. So
thank you. It's not a bad idea.
Anyway. All right. So everybody stay there, Garcia, and see you just joined the room. Don't do anything just yet. We're going to be right back with our dear friends, the Tenutos. Hold on right there. It's like we're a high-class professional production. Isn't this amazing?
Magic.
We've got great videos. And Dan, we have wonderful guests whom we haven't seen in a long time.
Long time. It is so great to see you both. As we were talking about before we went live tonight, we actually haven't seen you in person since before COVID, and that's just a sin. That's just awful. It's great to see you both. Welcome to Thursday Night Geeks, and welcome back to Trek Geeks.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Thank you.
So for the rest of the world who doesn't know about your super fanness, you all have written some books. You've got a Star Trek 2 book that is fantastic. Dan doesn't know it yet, but he's going to purchase for me your upcoming Star Trek 3 book. Before we dive into everything, do you want to tell us a little bit about that and when it drops?
Yes, we just got the final version of it today to take a look at, and it looks great. We actually, if it's hopefully not sacrilegious, think it's better than our Wrath of Khan book.
That's okay.
Only because I think Wrath of Khan, where everybody's really familiar with a lot of the aspects of it because it's Wrath of Khan, whereas I think Search for Spock has gotten a little bit of short shrift in that department. I think over the years it hasn't as much attention. So we're really, really excited about it. It's going to be a perfect sort of sequel book. It looks like the same. It's the same size, same number of pages, the same look, except it's tweaked a little bit to be Star Trek 3 themed. We
have more interviews.
Yeah, a lot more interviews,
nice.
Including some amazing people, some captains and things like that. And we were able to talk to some people who, like Keegan Allen, who is the son of Philip Allen. Keegan Allen is Walking Dead. I'm sorry, not Walking Dead. Walker, Texas Walker, the new Walker.
Right.
And Pretty Little Liars, and just a beautiful one. I mean, the most heartwarming conversation about a son who lost his father when he was young, who used to watch Star Trek on his VHS tape, Star Trek 3, playing it over and over again. Just wonderful stories. We had Robin Curtis was doing our forward.
Oh, she's so wonderful.
Wonderful human.
Absolutely great. And we talked to the Spocks. We talked to Vaz Potenza and Stephen Manley, and they were kids on the set, and kids remember everything. So
even things like the smells, it was incredible. So really great stories to tell, great pictures. We're very excited. We think our fellow fans are gonna love it because we just think it's a wonderful bunch of stories. So that comes in September.
Bill, I will be happy to buy that for you because I will be buying one as well.
Well, you're damn right you will.
If you go to San Diego Comic-Con, they're hoping to have it there for a certain number. Yeah.
We'll keep that in mind.
Are you guys going to be in Vegas by any chance?
I was just going to ask that.
I don't think this year. We haven't heard anything about it, but it'd be wonderful. We'd love to go.
Yeah, we'll see if we can, if Dan can get some folks on the horn and work his magic, because he has absolutely no pull with anything whatsoever, not even the show.
I'm so good at getting people back on the show. It only takes me 10 years. So
so, you guys, if maybe by 2031 we could be all set. So it was an interesting premise for why we wanted to talk to you guys tonight. So let me set the table. I was a year before last. I was at my sister's house for Thanksgiving. She lives outside of Atlanta. Her kids are older now, so she's probably close to 70, and I'm 55. And when my wife and I were riding with her and my brother-in-law, we noticed that they listen to pretty much the same era of music all the time. And I thought that was interesting. So then I get back home, and it took me about a month and a half to realize I listened to my era of music, sort of the 80s, kind of like between 82 and 89, almost constantly. There's been so much great music since then. There's a lot of stuff I love, but I seem to focus squarely in that zone. If I carry that forward, I noticed within the last year, if I'm watching Star Trek, it is almost exclusively TOS, with the exception of new episodes of like Lower Decks. So I'm wondering, am I broken?
No. I think so many people are like that. I think there's an association. So with music, I'm the same way. I listen within almost the same years that you just mentioned. And there's so many associations I associated with school, with friends. I did gymnastics. So I'm like, this was good floor routine music. And I know this person used this music. And then the same thing with television shows. There's a comfort with that. And it's so easy to have that fondness, especially for TOS or TNG, because there's so many episodes versus it'll be interesting to see in the future if people have that same kind of association with the newer shows. But you don't have as many episodes, whereas, TNG went for 7 seasons, and then there were so many more episodes per season than what you get today. You get a show, you might only have 6 or 8 or 10 episodes in a season. So there's just so much older Trek to have that fondness. And with association, like with Enterprise, when Enterprise premiered, I was pregnant with our son. We had just found out. So
wait a second, you're telling me that little kid is like in his 20s?
22.
Yeah.
Yeah, 22.
20, yeah.
College graduate.
Wow.
I am so old.
It's funny. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was watching Enterprise when he was born. You'd have to wait till you put him to bed to watch it. So there's associations with that. And then if he had trouble sleeping, we would play that theme song, and sometimes over and over again, and he'd fall asleep. So there's just a lot of happy memories.
I fall asleep to that theme song too.
I fall asleep when Dan is talking.
It has been a long road. Anyway, it's funny that you say that, because when I was younger, I didn't think about stuff like that. And as I've gotten older, I kind of see myself missing those growing up years. And I'm not sure if that has something to do with it. It's one thing to just, like the 80s music that I love listening to, the pop stuff, because that's what I grew up listening to and I'm just used to it. Or am I missing it and trying to kind of like catch that line and pull it back in a little bit? For me, it's like Bill said, I grew up when I first started watching Trek, it was the original series was really all that there was for the first several years until the mid 80s. That's where I find myself going back to almost exclusively. I do find myself going to Deep Space Nine because Deep Space Nine has that very special connection with me and it's saving my life. But I have always wondered if the age factor has more to do with a nostalgia grab or just that what we were used to as we were growing up. And that's one of the reasons why I was so happy to have you guys come on to kind of explain that, what's going on in our heads when stuff like that is going on.
Well, he's the perfect person to talk to. He's got a theory about that.
So many. There's 3 things, I guess, just listening to everybody talk. But I brought this as an example. So this is my. Speaking of music, Bill, this is my 1979. This is my original record I bought when I was a kid back in 1979, and this is from 2023. The reissue they did on it, which is in every way, shape, and form superior, right? This is a gatefold, the other one was,
that's
the records are colored, it's heavier vinyl, it sounds better on the thing. But you know what I listen to all the time? This one.
Yep.
Why? Because of what Mary Jo was talking about a little bit, and I think maybe spinning too a little bit with what Dan was saying about nostalgia or about age. And I think it's because that record, my parents bought me that record. I remember listening to it and my parents listening to it sort of with me, not begrudgingly, but, in the next room, like hearing it and, and having that sort of parental, knowledge through osmosis kind of a thing. Why do I love Star Trek 2 so much? Because I saw it with my father when I was, 13 years old. On opening night just by accident. And I got introduced to the world of Star Trek fandom and who are these people? And I had thought I was alone liking Star Trek at that time, and I remember seeing Star Trek 3 with my mom and dad. And so I think, certainly I think there's an association and a memory we have with these childhood experiences that we don't always kind of retain. It's almost like, I don't know if anybody watches a show from whatever decade you were a kid in, and you haven't seen that show in 30 years, but when the episode comes on, you remember it like you just saw it. Whereas,
oh my gosh.
As an adult, I watch an episode of a show and I can't remember what I watched 5 minutes ago, because as a kid, everything is a sponge and we remember everything. And I think that has to do with our first introduction to Trek or to James Bond or to Superman or whatever the franchise happens to be. It's that association and that memory and that familial connection in many ways, or friendship connection, going to see it with a friend, going to see it at this time of life, or as Mary Jo was saying, remembering Nikki being a baby and us navigating around that, and how Enterprise was just a great relaxation time for us, to watch it. But I think on a larger scale, that issue of nostalgia is really important socially. So the word nostalgia is really interesting because it comes from a Greek word, two Greek words, nostos, which, by the way, if you spell it, Nostos.
I see we did there.
I'm just saying, and that means a return, and then the word algos, which means pain. And so I don't think a lot of people. I've always fascinated by this when I learned it. Nostalgia was considered an emotional trouble. It was a mental trouble. It was studied in 1688 by a psychologist by the name of Johannes Hofer, and it had to do with Swiss soldiers having a nostalgic feeling about wanting to go back home. So what I think has happened over time is we've split those two ideas. There's homesickness, which is we don't think of as nostalgia. And then there's nostalgia, which I think we almost exclusively think of as like sort of popular culture now.
Sure.
There's the way we think about it. And I think what happens in the 1970s, to tell this quickly, it's a long concept, but this concept that we have, Mary Jo and I, what's called the 20-year nostalgia cycle. It was a way for us to teach our students history, popular culture history, but it became a realization to us. So in the 1970s, what do you have? What's popular? Well, there's a lot of 70s stuff that's rooted in the 70s itself, disco, things like that. But there's also a huge swath of the 70s that's 50s based. Yeah. Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley. The Godfather takes place partially in the 50s. You have this whole sort of, Grease. There's this whole 50s, American Graffiti. You have this whole 50s, although American Graffiti skirts more of the 60s, but it's very close. It's 50s driving culture, really, even though it was set in the early 60s. And so that you get this idea of people being 20 years nostalgic in the 70s. Why? Because no one wanted to be nostalgic for the 60s. And I think at that time, all the pain of the 60s was still close. All the assassinations, RFK, JFK, MLK. You have the, Vietnam waging. You've got all the verses of the 70s, all the groups that are, young people, old people. All these groups are antagonistic towards one another. Tradition versus, what the future could be, or do we have to dress this way? And you have all this sort of strife, I think, in the 60s. So if you're going to be nostalgic in the 70s, you're not going to go back 10 years. You're going to go back 20 years.
Huh.
And,
interesting.
And then I think what happens is this is kind of crude, but I think it's real. They make a lot of money on that. I mean, that's just the reality. And so in the 80s, they go, well, we're far enough away from the 60s. Let's start doing, Vietnam themed films. Mm-hmm. Let's start doing the Wonder Years. Let's start doing 60s based. Yeah. Let's bring the Monkees back and have them have a #1 hit again, and let's start bringing that back. And then, so what you start having is almost like automatically the culture, well, I wouldn't say automatically, as a function of two things, I think. One is the corporate side. We're going to bring this out now. It's the 90s, so we're going to give you that 70s show, right?
Right.
It's the 90s. We're going to bring back the Bee Gees. And that's really true of Star Trek too. I mean, really, if you think about it, the 60s Star Trek, 80s Star Trek movies, 2000s Kirk Spock again, but now with new people playing them. And so we have this sort of nostalgia wave in these 20-year cycles. And that's partially because the corporate side is pushing it. Like, hey, now's the time to bring back Rubik's Cubes,
And you see it with fashion too, right?
Yes.
Bell bottoms came back in the 90s, but of course they always come back with a twist because they don't want you raiding, your parents' closet. They want you to buy new stuff. So there's a little something different or updated to it.
But I think also too, it has to do with a little bit of what Dan was saying is like you reach an age. In fact, this month I turned 56. Always happy to share a birthday with Leonard Nimoy.
Happy birthday! And
I miss Shatner by just a few days, but it's okay. I still have Leonard Nimoy. But I'll be 56, and I remember when I got into my early 40s, all of a sudden I became very interested in who my family was. Like, who were my grandparents really, other than old people I knew and loved, but old people? What did they look like when they were younger? When did they come here? What did they do for a living? All these questions that we almost never think to ask. How did they meet? Those types of things. And I became very interested in ancestry research, which is very helpful when both of my parents passed away, because it was a way for me to get to know even them better through the ancestry research. But I think we become very, I don't want to say focused on our childhood in our 40s and 50s. But we do realize we have less days maybe ahead of us than we had behind us. And we start wondering where we came from. And I think all of that comes, that gets into the 20-year nostalgia waves, because a lot of us, when we're in our sort of 30s and 40s, not all of us, of course, but we might have kids, or we have nieces and nephews, and they're little kids, and we want to share our childhood with them. So we start revisiting these things again. I think for all those reasons, for the association, for the memories that we associate with that, for the good feelings that it brings us, and also for the sort of just the look backwards we start to do, I think, when we get older.
I think I can appreciate that piece of it, because I kind of feel like a statistical outlier in the data set. I've often wondered if nostalgia is the cause or the byproduct at times. I've talked about on the podcast a few times that I'm an adult survivor of child abuse. And through disassociation, that's how I connected with Star Trek. Because in those moments that were frankly unbearable, I was, in my mind, walking the bridge of the Enterprise and recalling every episode I'd ever seen. And to be watching it now kind of brings back a strange mix of feelings and memories. Some of it being, this is not just my safe place, but it's my haven. But also, the young boy who used to watch this was in a really bad state. So it's to hear that, nostalgia is kind of based in pain in a sense, in its root words, is really kind of fascinating to me. I almost don't know what to do with that. That's kind of why I feel like I'm broken.
Well, no. I think, I'm way more emotional. There's a different franchise, so please don't anyone run away.
Okay.
But I felt very emotional when Luke returned in The Mandalorian for that moment.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right. I felt very emotional, and I think it is all wrapped up in whether it could be pain or joy. It's strong feelings that we had when we were children. They could be good feelings, good experiences or bad experiences. But we like, to me, it wasn't just Luke coming back. It was me at 13. It was my parents still alive. It was, now, would I want to go back there? No, of course not, because I wouldn't have my wife and I wouldn't have my son, and I don't want to go back, but I would like to bring as much of that as I can and drag it with me into now, the good sides of it, I think. But no, I think that's a very, I think you hit on something too. But with the idea of these are our friends.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, these are your friends and family, that crew you grow up with, or the crew that helps you through a problem, or who helps you figure something out, or whatever it happens to be. So whether it's in the 1970s, somebody going through something and Star Trek helps them, or whether it's now and Saru helps a kid who's afraid all the time. I mean, it's all of a sudden Saru's not just a character; Saru's a friend. Right.
Yep. It's amazing. I got comments to both of you. First of all, thank you for showing that album, the original. As people know from listening to the show, I did not like TOS growing up because my brother had control of the TV and I wanted to watch something else. He wanted to watch it. I started appreciating and liking Trek when the motion picture came out. And I remember when I was very young, my brother and his friend would be in the living room at my parents' house with that album playing loudly, and they would be sitting in the living room with their eyes closed, being the maestro. And that's when I started appreciating the music of Star Trek so much, and why I love the motion picture so much. So seeing that original album just blew me away. Tonight, as a matter of fact, my wife asked me something which you brought up just a minute ago, John, and we're watching Three's Company at dinner now. We're doing a rewatch. I have not watched it since the original days, and we were watching an episode tonight that I have not seen since 1980, and I was sitting there quoting the episode before the quotes took place, and what you just said makes perfect sense. As we're kids, we absorb everything, and she's like, "How do you do that?" And I haven't the slightest idea, so that sheds some light on it. And the third point to you, Mary Jo, I really liked what you said earlier, and I think it really will be interesting to see if the young people of today have the connection with the new Trek, specifically because of the lack of number of episodes. Like you said, 10 episodes. It's amazing that we wait 3 years now for a season of a television show, and it's only 10 episodes at the most. Whereas back in the TNG and DS9 years, it was 26 episodes at a minimum per season. So I think that's going to be very interesting to see if that connection is still there 20 years from now for the young people.
Yeah, and with those the older Trek shows, it was very patterned. So you knew in the fall you'd get the new fall lineup of television shows, and it would run from fall to May. And like you said, with the new shows, sometimes it's 1 year between seasons. Sometimes if something happens, certainly with COVID, things got delayed. It's not as predictable. It's not as standard of when something's going to come out. And so there's that, again, like that association, that ritual of, you go to school, you come home, you do your homework, you have Star Trek to look forward to watching. Yeah.
I also think it's interesting too, when it was out of our control in a way. In other words, Star Trek was on when it was on. Mm-hmm. And maybe in the 80s you could start what we call tape delaying it. Remember those days? Tape delaying it.
Yeah.
But I think you watched it when it was on, and I think in some ways that deprivation of it made it special too. That it wasn't, I could just put it on, I could stream it anytime I want, I can watch it anytime I want. But Mary Jo's very much a fan of episodic television.
Yes.
And I think that whether it's $6 Million Man, which we were watching today, they could be anything any week within that format with Star Trek particularly. Mm-hmm. So it could be a Western this week or whatever. The problem is, so if you didn't like the episode, it was okay. So next week would be better. The problem, I think, with arc-based shows, if you don't like that arc.
I think that's interesting because right now, I am not as connected with the new shows because of the arc, except for Strange New Worlds. And I think one of the reasons why I'm more connected to that is because it's that return to the episodic television and a week planet, a new planet every week type of story.
And I'm curious too if people will return to watching an arc-based show when it's kind of similar to if you read a murder mystery, you know the outcome. Would you read it again?
Yeah.
I'm not great. I love mysteries, but I don't feel the need to rewatch or reread them because I know. So with episodic, I don't feel that way. I'll watch something over and over.
Amazing. Well, I got to tell you, it is such a breath of fresh air to have two smart people on the show instead of just two dumb hosts that are here every week. We cannot thank you guys enough for joining us to give us your perspective on this. The stuff you said is amazing and makes it helps me, and I'm sure it helps Bill make much more sense of this thought process that we've been going through recently with our connection to Trek. You guys are welcome back anytime at all. I promise it will not be another decade before we get together with you guys. And let us know if you're going to be in Vegas, because if so, drinks are on us. Absolutely.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, at least on Dan. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I'm buying the book and I'm buying the drinks. That's okay. I don't mind it. Thanks so much, John and Mary Jo Tenuto. A pleasure to see you guys. We're going to take a quick break, do a little business with America, and then we're going to come back with our senior producer, Jude Tatman, to talk about his perspective on this whole great topic. Thanks again, guys.
Thank you.
Well, Dan, here we are. It's business with America time, and we love to talk about our friends at Fansets. We're so grateful to them each and every week for being with us, and we can't thank them enough for being the presenting sponsor of both Trek Geeks and now for Thursday Night Geeks, dude.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we say it every week, another moment to thank the best team in the business. They now have over 500 Star Trek pins. New pins are coming out all the time. They have 2 new ones this week. Just came out the other day. Amity did a great video on Instagram and the Book of Faces. Right now, from their ever-expanding Delta collection, you can get the Discovery Vice Admiral Delta. And hey, Bill, big surprise here. It's available in both pin and magnet form. It's about time they did that with their Deltas, right?
I know. It's so many magnets. I don't know what to do with them.
I know. And it's funny, Bill. Last time we talked about new releases, they had the new Porthos pin from Enterprise, and we weren't sure if they really had any pet pins for Star Trek yet. And now, for a second week in a row, they have another pet Star Trek pin because Spot is now available. Felis catus is your fansetonomic nomenclature, an endothermic quadruped carnivorous by nature? That's my question.
I think my question is, how did you know how to speak those words? Because you can't even pronounce the name of our podcast.
Trek Geeks, my friends.
Dan, those are amazing. I mean, I'm a big dog person, but I'm sure all the cat lovers in the audience have got to love the fact that Spot is finally available from Fansets. I will add that pin to my collection, even though I'm allergic to cats. It's not because I hate them. I'm allergic. Please don't at me. Please, I'm begging you. But of course, get the Spot pin and get all the dog pins too, and get that Vice Admiral pin and add them all to your cart. And then at checkout, enter the special discount code word Trek Geeks right there in that corner to get 10% off your entire order. That's Trek Geeks in all capital letters with no spaces. And of course, Dan, when you spend more than $30 on fansets.com, just $30, you get free shipping automatically within the United States.
That's a fantastic bargain, especially with prices going through the roof they are these days. Fansets. Our pins, they have character. And we want to thank our friends at Fansets for being the presenting sponsor of Thursday Night Geeks.
So, Dan, I got a box from JC at Kryptonite Creations the other day. You know, after our estate was shut down for the 2 inches of snow we got in my area of North Carolina. Of course, Ross got a lot more up north.
Yeah.
Ross, who's watching tonight, but I have some stuff to send you, and I want to preview some of that right now.
I'd love to see it because I don't know what the hell you got.
Well, first off, I have the Star Trek Discovery Type 2 phaser.
That piece of work.
Hand painted.
Wow.
It's perfect. It fits right in my hand. I can phase you. I love it already. I've got the stand over there. I just barely took this out of the box tonight. And I'm going to set it up. But Dan, that's not the only Starfleet defensive weapon I have. I also have the Star Trek First Contact Type 2 Cobra Head phaser in all its glory.
Beautiful.
It is
lovely.
It's lightweight too. I mean, I can imagine it's just like those prop pieces on set. You can see it's got the indicators on top.
Nice. That is fantastic work.
It really is. And I love the curve of it, like the First Contact ones had.
Yep.
It's not, it seems a little more like an actual weapon as opposed to trying to hold a dustbuster.
Did you actually call them defensive weapons?
They are defensive weapons.
I would use them on offense against you every day of the week.
Well, in which case, you're going to hold off on shooting me because I also have the TNG Starfleet tricorder. Yeah.
Look at that. I can even hear the sounds in my head right now.
That's just the voices. But I mean, it's not just static. I mean, it does close.
Oh my gosh, it even
open. It's hinged. It's a beautiful
Look at the
piece.
detail on that. Wow.
It looks not unlike my Playmates tricorder from, the toy factory, dozens of decades ago.
Wow.
But I love this. And Dan,
that's amazing.
You and I got a special present from JC.
Oh boy,
he has a headphone stand available.
He does. It's very
on
nice.
his shop for Star Trek. He has made us custom Trek Geeks headphone stands.
Out. Get out.
Based on the design of our Memento Mori pin, which we give out to friends when we see them at conventions. So if you're going to go to Vegas this summer, be sure to stop by and we'll give you one of those pins because they're beautiful. Of course, but this headphone stand is where my ear cans are going to sit right on my desk.
That's gorgeous.
Broadcast. And that box will be coming to you next week, buddy.
Fantastic. Absolutely incredible work by JC. We want anybody who loves any type of genre, head over to kryptonitecreations.myshopify.com. He has all kinds of great stuff there. And as you just saw, the attention to detail in the paint jobs that he does on these things after they're printed out is just amazing. I cannot wait to get my hands on those phasers and get my life-size cardboard cutout of Bill and just pew, 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 pew all day long. It'll be fantastic.
Hey, that's not very nice.
I'm just kidding. I don't have a cutout of you.
But yeah, you don't. If you don't have a 3D printer, this is a great way to add stuff to your collection. Whether you cosplay or whether you just like to have it sit on a shelf. So get on out to kryptonitecreations.myshopify.com. Check out the stuff that JC is making because I am very psyched. I never thought I'd get one of these, and it's fantastic. So,
and can I say the prices for these amazing pieces are incredibly affordable. So if you are looking, like Bill said, these are great things to have for cosplay. They're great things to have on your displays, like the ones behind me and behind Bill. Check it out. Check JC's stuff out. It's incredible. I may actually even, I don't know where I'd put it, but I'm building the DeLorean Lego set right now. I might have to get the skateboard that he has available for Back to the Future 2, just so I can have something to go with my DeLorean.
I'll tell you where to put it. That's kryptonitecreations.myshopify.com. Again, kryptonitecreations.myshopify.com. We'll be right back. And Dan, look at that. We're back, just like advertised.
Boom.
Nothing but, true facts here on Trek Geeks. I did want to take a moment to go through some comments. Dan at one point impressed himself. So we should everybody mark that down on your calendars, people.
I did. I couldn't believe I didn't screw that up.
25. Ross says he got a half a foot of snow just an hour away from me, and I only got like maybe 2 inches. And of course, hi, Jesse. So, Dan, you and I had the opportunity a couple of months back when we were prepping to do this for the audio show only,
right
before we had ever kicked off Thursday Night Geeks, to talk to a young man we came to know a handful of years ago. So you want to talk about how we met him and who he is?
Well, he is one of the nicest people you'd ever want to meet. He's a young lad by the name of Jude Tatman. He's listens to the show. He has become very dear friends, and he is a lifelong friend. The show helps him stay grounded. The show helps him not be anxious about things going on in his life. And it's quite an honor for us to have that type of effect on someone. So we have had several conversations with him. And of course, we always talk about his mom a lot. I've gotten very close to his mom, just, seeing how things are across the pond, how he's doing in school, how the family's doing. They really are wonderful people. We decided to make him the senior producer for all time, the only person who will ever hold that title on Trek Geeks. And he wears that Delta proudly, or he wears that badge of honor proudly, and we're honored that he is the senior producer. He has amazing insight for stuff for someone as young as he is. And it's amazing to hear some of the things that he talks about. And we're like, wow, why couldn't we have been that smart when we were that age? Because we certainly weren't and aren't. So we talked to him about what we wanted to do with this episode. We said, you know what? We're finally going to get you on the show. We're very excited. His mom went nuts when we told him that we were going to have him on the show. So we got to have a conversation about the same type of thing that we just talked to the Tenutos about what it's like for someone his age, with how he makes this connection with Star Trek and what he tethers on to as he is watching stuff at his age. And I think it's going to be interesting to see the difference between what we just talked about with the Tenutos and what we're going to talk about with Jude here coming up.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's refreshing perspective to have, because we know Star Trek through our perspective and through some of our friends who were of similar age. But I mean, Jude just entered university this year. He's been digesting Star Trek for the past few years since he was in high school. And to hear his thoughts is really kind of great. So everybody, please, we recorded this conversation, I want to say about 2 months ago. Hoping to use it before then, but we figured it would be good to play for you now. So please enjoy this conversation with our senior producer, Jude Tatman. So Dan, as we continue our sort of examination on whether Star Trek has passed us by or not, we thought it would be good to get some additional perspective. And to that end, we have, well, let's be honest, our boss.
Not wrong. Yeah.
Not wrong. So why don't you introduce this extremely special guest here on Trek Geeks?
Absolutely. We've had great guests in the past. We've had Andrew Robinson on the show. We've had Nana Visitor, which was so great. We've had John Billingsley, just Star Trek greats. But
Jerry
then there's
Ryan.
another Jerry Ryan, Anson Mount, Scott
Bakula.
We could go on and on and on, but they still have not reached that pinnacle, that tier of the person that we have to talk to today, because he is the only person in the history of the universe that will have the title senior producer of Trek Geeks. He is finally here with us, all the way over from jolly old England. It is Jude Tatman. Jude, we cannot tell you how excited we are to finally have you on the show. We talk about you every week. We love you so much. We are so happy you're here. And I can't wait to have this discussion with someone who has such higher intelligence than either one of the two hosts of this podcast.
Fact.
Oh, thank you very much. It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Wow, even though Dan's here, that's amazing.
I know. He even dressed in uniform, full uniform.
I know.
for the occasion. It's pretty awesome. You know, Jude, we've been talking a lot. We've talked so much in email, and I had the privilege of meeting you and your family last year when I visited Europe with my wife and family. It's great to have you on the show. We were talking just last week. We had a little video chat with Bill and I, along with you, and we talked about what we're talking about here in this week's episode. And you gave us some perspective that just blew us away. So we can't wait to hear what you have to say about it. And thanks again for being here. It's really good to see you.
Thank you.
So Jude, let's set the table, okay? Let's tell everybody about your Star Trek fandom, because I think that's probably pretty key, right? So how long ago did you become a Star Trek fan?
Become a Star Trek fan, I think probably in the last sort of 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
I was the first Star Trek that I watched was, I think my father tried to get us to watch an episode of The Cage. He tried to get us to watch The Cage on his iPad a long time ago. I think he's probably quite confused because William Shatner wasn't there. He probably didn't know why, because this is on Netflix. And then it wasn't quite for me. And then I think at some point I dipped into either the original series or Discovery, and that led into everything.
Wow. So do you have a favorite series, or are you still kind of waiting to make up your mind until you've seen everything?
I think in a way, yeah. So I've got a little bit of Voyager left to watch, and then I'll be completist, which is great. I think even though it's a popular choice, I think that Deep Space Nine is probably, for me, at least one of my favorite series. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, Dan, that's amazing. It took me over 40 years to become a completist, and now Jude's done it in, a handful of years, and I feel woefully inadequate now.
Well, I wish I could put that on my phone as your ringtone, pal, because you are woefully inadequate. It really is amazing. But I will say, I think that's one of the benefits, or maybe one of the non-benefits of today's technology, where you can binge watch stuff all the time. Back in the day, we had to wait a whole summer before we found out what happened with Jean-Luc Picard and Best of Both Worlds. Nowadays, you take a potty break and then you just get right back in and start the next season. So it is kind of cool, even though it took you 40 years and it's only taken Jude a few. That's still pretty impressive when you're talking about 800 plus episodes of Star Trek to be watching. So only a couple more seasons left of Voyager, and then you will have that awesome title, like you can put in World of Warcraft. You can have a title next to your name. You will be the completist, Jude Tatman.
So, as you've watched each of these Star Treks, did you... I'm trying to think of the right way to phrase this question. Did you like a series and then start a new one and then decide you liked the new one more than the last one? Or did you always compare one to the first one you watched? Or how did you ultimately decide that Deep Space Nine was kind of, your favorite at this point?
I think that's an interesting question, because I think having watched both the original series and Discovery, at least up until the point that I watched all of Discovery up to the point I started Deep Space Nine, which are two very different shows, I think. And Deep Space Nine is somewhere in the middle of that, transition to more serialized storytelling. So I think there was just something about the characters, and I don't know if it was the age that I got to Deep Space Nine at, where I felt more able to appreciate sort of character work a bit more. I think that's an understanding or an appreciation I've only come to quite recently. So I think that it was a number of factors. I just think that it was the show that I felt got the balance of tones between the original series, I suppose, and Discovery. I think there's a tonal intermediate, again, that Deep Space Nine acts as there. So yeah, there's a few things, but I think it's quite difficult to try and judge the current shows, I feel, by the shows from the 90s, the legacy Trek. I just think there's so many differences, and I think even though the ethos is the same, I think so much has changed in the world, both in the real world and in media, that I think there's a bit of difficulty comparing, maybe.
Sure. So if there's a rainy day and you've got no classes, let's say, you got nothing to do, you decide to plop yourself down in front of your TV or your tablet, and you decide you're going to watch some Star Trek. Are you automatically going to gravitate toward your favorite, or do you go, what do I want to watch today?
I think that's interesting. I think because I've been watching the shows sort of in order, I think, and there's an aspect of maybe Voyager and TNG and Deep Space Nine to an extent, and definitely the original series, where you can just dip in and out because of that sort of episodic format. And I think if there was a rainy day, would I try and watch half the season of Discovery? Maybe not. I'd have to decide I was going to do that over a couple of weeks.
Okay.
So, and I'm not sure. I think maybe the original series, just because it's so. I think it's something about the main three. There's something that makes it so accessible, I think, because it's, again, like from an era where, watching television, you watched it live or you didn't, and it only came into syndication a bit later. And I think there's something about it that feels so like a teleplay, I think.
Right.
Yeah, I think so.
I really like that perspective. I want to get your perspective as such a young person, because what Bill and I have been talking about is the fact that although we love all Star Trek and always will love all Star Trek, and the new stuff is great and we will always watch it when it comes out, we have found ourselves kind of going back. And to answer Bill's question, if I'm going to sit down and watch something, 9.9 times out of 10, it's going to be an episode of Deep Space Nine. And that other 0.1 might be an episode of TNG or Enterprise or Voyager. It's always that legacy, or even to some respect, maybe 9.9 is too high because I'm also going to include TOS. I'm going to include all of the old stuff, all of the legacy stuff. And I think it's because that's where my fandom started. When I was a kid watching TNG, TOS, when I didn't want to watch it because my brother was making me watch it. And then through all the shows that I got to watch as they took place on television back in the day. As a young person, I'm hearing you saying that you kind of think back towards those as well. Do you think that there are going to be instances where you would be more connected to the Trek that is on at the time you started watching it, even though you became a completist and watched all of the old stuff? But you've got, for example, Prodigy right now, which you just told us before we started recording that you just finished, which is awesome. And I got a couple things I want to ask you about that in a minute. But do you think that that's something that you could find yourself doing over time? Are you more, I'm sticking with the old stuff that I really loved when I first started watching all of them in bulk?
I think because I haven't finished yet, I'm not really sure how I'm going to be revisiting this stuff. I wonder if maybe there's something, because I've consumed Star Trek, if you will, as sort of in a block. There's maybe to some extent where I don't have any sort of sentimental attachment towards them individually, and I wonder if that maybe makes it a bit easier to be a bit more flexible. It wasn't I watched this at an important time of my life, because I've watched it in such a small amount of time. So I think in a way that means that there maybe isn't that sort of emotional preference for either one. I think I would, especially some of the newer shows that I've loved, I'd definitely watch again. I'd watch again very soon.
Outside of Star Trek, do you have an all-time favorite television show? And if you don't, that's fine too.
It's tonally very different. There's a comedy show over here, or was made over here, called actually, sorry, this is interesting. They're called Garth Marenghi's Dark Place, which is the name that lent its the title to, I believe, one of the season 4 Lower Decks episodes. Sorry.
Oh, interesting.
The Ferengi episode. It was so absurd, because it's a cult show and for it to pop up. And I'm sorry if this is going on a tangent.
No, not at all.
No, not at all.
I watched the episode, the Frankenstein episode, and then I met the creator of the actual Garth Marenghi's Dark Place a couple of weeks later.
Oh, cool.
It's so weird, but I think Star Trek for me, there's something so powerful about the message that I haven't experienced with any other show. I think that the optimism and these ideas and the extent to which it helps like teach people, adults, about various issues that they just might not understand from their perspective. I don't think there is a show that's had the same impact on me as any of the Star Treks.
That's important. I think that's something that we've always talked about constantly on the podcast is the message of optimism and hope. And with everything that's going on in the world today, and especially in the United States today, it's something that is even more important to hold on to know that we can get to that particular place that is, as we always like to say with our little air quotes, Bill, Gene's vision. We like doing that. So I have a question for you, Jude, in regards to Prodigy, because you said you just completed it recently. And spoiler alert for anybody who has not completed season 2 of Prodigy, I'm going to give away a couple spoilers here. So if you don't want to hear them, stop listening and come back in about fast forward about 5 minutes so that you won't have to hear any spoilers. So you're a person just getting ready to head off to college, and you are a young person and you're watching Prodigy. Do you think that the message in Prodigy, we're talking about Gene's vision, do you think that the message of what's going on in Prodigy, especially in season 2, is just as important as the message that is brought out through TOS and all of the legacy shows? And why?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's something so timeless about the stories that that are being told through all of the eras. I think that because Star Trek goes for these sort of fundamental human issues that have plagued us throughout history, there's something that means that it will never become irrelevant. So I think with Prodigy's message about the regime that Essentia imposes, essentially being out of a place of fear, and it actually ends up becoming totalitarian. I think that that's really interesting. I think that no matter what time period you're in, unfortunately, you will see those seeds. I think that the personal stories that they've told with Zero and Dal this season in particular, again, I think they have the same relevance. You know, people coming to terms with their own limitations in regards to Dal, and accepting they have a lot to learn and pushing other people up. And then with Zero, I think that there's an interpretation there about being able to realize who you are inside and express that outwardly. And I think, again, there's, I think, a lot of topicality with those now, but I don't feel like those are stories that will age poorly.
Excellent. Now, I'm glad to hear that. I will say, with regards to Zero, we talked about this a little bit a couple weeks ago. I love the storyline with Zero. I love what Zero has gone through as a character, and how the character has grown and does have that, you know, learning about feelings. But I gotta say, I could not stand the way that Zero looked when Zero got their new body. Did not like it at all. So I was very happy in just this last episode where he got the upgraded, you know, garbage can look. I thought that was great. Bill, you're shaking your head. Did you like the way that Zero looked?
I loved it.
Not like
I loved it.
Oh, did you really? Oh, okay.
I thought it was such a great change, and it allowed Zero to have this experience and not look so markedly different from everybody they came into contact with. You know, they looked humanoid, and I thought that added to the experience somehow. You know, it's, you know, you see this, you know, Medusan that, you know, kind of makes you go mad when you look at it, you know, especially if you're human. You know, to know that that was always the danger of somebody looking at him without protection over their eyes, to be transformed into this being that could touch and smell and taste was, I thought, just a beautiful evolution of the character. And
Well,
then when Zero lost that, I was really heartbroken. I'll admit it.
Interesting. I love the idea of it, and you must be Medusan because I go mad when I look at you, but that's besides the point. But what I was gonna say is that I appreciated that whole part of it. Everything that you just said is great,
Yeah.
but to me, the way that Zero looked kind of like an avatar from the movie Avatar, and it distracted me enough to make me dislike it a little bit. I absolutely loved what happened with the humanoid form, with the whole episode where he aged because he was in that radiation sphere. I thought it was great, which then got him back to the I keep saying him, I'm not really sure if that's the right way to put it. Their new form, which I loved seeing, and I haven't gone any further than that in Prodigy. I'm still waiting. So, Jude, I love what you just said with regards to Prodigy. What did you think about the change with Zero's outward form?
I think personally, I think so from a storytelling perspective, I think it was a really great development, this change into a more humanoid form and allowing Zero to experience the world the way that they wanted. On the other hand, I wasn't a huge fan of the actual design that they went for the organic body. That's just a personal thing. I felt like it the original way that Zero looked with the Medusan, I think the sort of glowy effect, I think that's beautiful, and that's not something that you see as a character. And I think that visually and being animation, I think this is quite an important thing. I think that was really striking, and I just felt like the loss of that to just be another, bipedal, two-armed, a humanoid that was just sort of quite a bright color, was just maybe quite similar to some of the other character designs that we've seen in the show. But again, I do think that storytelling wise, it was great.
So, Jude, before I ask my last question, I have to say, Dan, just in listening to Jude talk about Prodigy and his analysis of it, I got to tell you, Star Trek fandom is in great hands in the future. Because if this is the kind of things that are coming up for the next generation of Star Trek fans, this franchise is good to go. We're really in great shape.
It's amazing to me, Jude, to hear your thoughts and your opinions on a show in a way that is so thought out, intelligent. Bill and I are morons compared to listening to what you're talking about, because it's such a breath of fresh air from someone so young, starting off on this new college career very soon, to have such succinct and focused opinions about something. It shows the importance that Star Trek is to you, which we know, Bill and I, and now all our listeners do as well. I think it's just fantastic. And Bill could not have said it better. The future of Star Trek is in capable hands when it comes to people like you,
as opposed to incapable hands, which would be Dan's.
That's mine.
Okay, so
both of them right here.
So, Jude, my last question for you. So, when Dan and I were 18, so many years ago, Star Trek: The Next Generation had literally just premiered. So it premiered actually the weekend of my 18th birthday, and a couple weeks after Dan turned 18. And at that point, we had only ever had the original series and the animated series and some movies. So as now, as you reach this sort of age, and you're going to college for the first time, and you've got your whole world ahead of you to conquer and to do what you want to do with your life. Do you feel at this point, at this age, that there could ever be a time where Star Trek passes you by?
No, I don't think so. I think personally, the way that Star Trek, I think for me, has helped me empathize a bit and understand these new perspectives. I think at such a sort of critical time where those sorts of skills, you're learning that sort of thing. I think that I think to reject it would be ungrateful. And I also feel like, again, the optimism that Star Trek, I know it's sort of a buzzword, but that it inspires, and
Sure.
I haven't encountered in another show. And I think, not to be all doom and gloom, the world's probably it's not going to get much easier, I don't think, over the next
probably not
half a century. So I think that escapism, and it really is escapism, because it allows you to imagine a world where all of these issues, which I think I'm quite pessimistic usually, but it's the one thing that gives me hope. And I think that, if anything, my need for that, and hopefully other people my age who discover Star Trek, I think that there will be a dependence on that will grow even stronger.
I love
Makes
it.
me think of one other final question that I have for you on my side, and that is, back when Enterprise was canceled, it was canceled for the most part because people seem to have a little bit of Star Trek burnout, which I never really believed or understood back in that time. A couple of years ago, Bill and I would always be talking about on the show that it was the best time ever to be a Star Trek fan because of all the stuff going on. Then stuff got canceled and stuff got moved to Netflix and movies got, thrown in the trash and this, that, and the other thing. Where do you find yourself with Star Trek? Will you be happy with new Star Trek all the time? Do you like the idea of having it a little bit more spread out like we're kind of seeing right now? Prodigy, we're not sure what's going on. Lower Decks last episode, Strange New Worlds season 3 is going to be the only live action one on for a while, and then Starfleet Academy is going to come out. Discovery just ended. Where are you in that? Are you give it to me all the time, or do you want it more spread out like we're starting to see now?
I think spread out would be good. I think that there are, sorry if this is quite an inflated response.
Not at all.
I think that there are a lot of issues at the moment, and because we're living in a social media age, it's very transparent the way that the business activities of Paramount has affected the franchise. And I think, there's some magic lost there. I also think that potentially there was a golden age, at least in the public awareness. I don't, and this is coming from the UK, where it's not as huge a thing, I don't think, as it is over across the pond with you guys. But I think it would be nice if there was a return where there was this cultural relevance. I just don't know if people would recognize Captain Burnham, but they would recognize Picard. I think that as long as there are stories that are being told that continue to have this core spirit of saying that we can be better, if that needs to adapt, if that needs to be slightly more darker, I think my personal opinion would be that we could maybe do with a bit more of that. If you can balance sort of realism with the, again, fundamental idea that humans are capable of good, I think maybe that would be more appealing to audiences. I just think as long as they keep making shows that are communicating the similar concepts, but in different ways that will engage more people and will engage Star Trek fans, because I don't think we want to see the same story told over and over again, exactly the same. Yeah. I think that will be great. And I think, if taking their time means that that's more likely to happen, that's brilliant.
All right. We can do better. That was a good way to put it. And Bill, I think it's easy to say that we can do better on the podcast by having this guy on more often, because
I can't argue that.
Yeah. Jude, it has been awesome talking to you. I am sure that all of our listeners are going to love to put a face to the name and hear that awesome accent that we love so much. And of course, your brilliant, right, that's true. And of course, your brilliant thoughts on what we're talking about, on whether or not Star Trek has passed us by. You, my friend, are welcome anytime you want on the show. Good luck in school. Do your homework. Be a good boy, or else.
Call your mom.
Call your mom.
I will. Thank you.
All right, buddy. It's great to see you. Live long and prosper, and we'll talk to you very soon.
Thank you.
This is what happens when you have an amateur running the broadcast. This is why we have Garcia, so that I don't make these mistakes.
No, it's fine.
You know, I'm kind of glad that we weren't able to do this as just an audio version of the podcast, because I think that having Jude as a part of this discussion tonight was kind of key. I mean, we know this about him, but what a wonderful and thoughtful young man. And I am honored and proud to be his friend. I genuinely am.
Yes, I'm sorry I started laughing mid-sentence to pull up. I just started laughing. I saw that come up, and I'm like, oh, God. I'm going to say something a little crass, but I mean it from my heart. Fucking A, that kid.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. I forgot how amazing that discussion was. And with all the shit going on in the world right now, having young people like Jude in the world, we are going to be okay, because he is the type of person that I want growing up to do great things. I am so proud of that kid and what he just did on the show tonight, even though it was a couple months ago.
Even if Star Trek does pass us by, I feel confident in knowing that young lads like Jude are all set. You know, they have this franchise well in hand, and it's in good shape as long as people like Jude are part of this fandom. I feel good. I feel like if you and I stop podcasting tomorrow, Jude and his generation have got this.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely. I gotta say, tonight was really special for me, man. We've had great guests on both the audio show and Thursday Night Geeks. Having the Tenutos on to give us their perspective, and having Jude on to give his perspective as a younger person, I'm blown away by tonight's show, by the discussion. I really am humbled by what we just got to be a part of.
You know, this isn't your average live stream, and we wanted to do things that were different. That's not to crap on anything anybody else is doing, because we think more Star Trek content is good for fandom.
Right.
But we want to be able to explore topics like these and themes like these, because as we age, so does our fandom. So we thank everybody for being a part of the chat tonight. Thank you so much for your damn near universal love for Jude. I know that that's going to mean a lot to him, and as much as it does to us. Oh, this is a comment of the night right here. Dan, be sure to send Jason Marks at Trek Geeks Delta.
I will do that. Absolutely.
Jude is way greater than Alex Kurtzman. I can't fault that. But sincere thanks to both John and Mary Jo Tenuto. We've known them for years, and we adore them. They are wonderful, wonderful people. And also sincere thanks to senior producer Jude Tapman, one of just the nicest young men on the planet. I can't even call him a kid. You know, right. He's in university now, and he's just such a wonderful young man. I'm glad that he can be involved in the show and not just be sort of like a ceremonial senior producer.
Exactly. Yep. Absolutely. Great time.
Well, guys, next week, we actually don't quite know what we're doing next week. We have a guest that we're trying to bring on. We're hoping to have Brian Volk-Weiss from the Nacelle Company to talk about action figures, and more action figures.
Lots of cool action figures.
But his schedule is cutting it real close. So it's either going to be Brian or a very hostful episode next Thursday night at 8 p.m. I know. Either way, you're going to have to see Dan's face, and I apologize to y'all.
Sorry.
Endlessly. But yeah, we're going to freestyle it, Jason. You know it.
Yeah.
But until next week, everybody, have a great week. We hope to see you all right back here on the Trek Geeks YouTube channel next Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern for Thursday Night Geeks. We hope you all live long and prosper. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Take care, everybody.